They were peaceful people. These were great people. The crowd was unbelievable. And I mentioned the word love, the love in the air. I've never seen anything like it.
Donald Trump will do any and everything that he can possibly get away with. He does not at all support the Constitution of the United States of America. This is a man who we better be careful about. I want to know about all of those right-wing organizations that he's connected with who are training up in the hills somewhere and targeting, what communities they're going to attack. We need to know now, given that he's telling us that there's going to be violence if he loses.
Facing so many Republicans in Manhattan, so many Trump supporters in Manhattan, is that surprising?
No, not at all. It's turning now. Trump's turn again.
What's your message to Joe Biden?
F*** you.
All right, we should be live right now. Let me just pull this chat up. I don't know why, but it just looked like that the intro didn't have any volume to it. I'm not sure. I guess I'll have to find out when we play it back. But good evening to everyone who's on right now for the live stream. Welcome, welcome. It's a little late, but better late than never. A couple things to do before I got set up. Hammer, what's going on, man? Good evening. Candace, the Greats Tuna. Dufresne, yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm exhausted. And I got to work 6 nights this week as opposed to 5. We have 1 million people on vacation, so nights. And so far, I really haven't figured I can get this live stream done on a weeknight basis before work, unless I can figure out a quicker way to get to work or if my job changes. One of those two things happen, then we'll be doing more lives. But this week I just have Monday off, so I figured I would spend it with you guys. And there's a lot of stuff going on, stuff I want to get to. I put a few things in the description tonight, but I don't know how many we'll get to. Hopefully a lot. Shamanic Soul Sisters, what's going on tonight, Sam? How you doing? Caleb, what's going on? I see Diaz in the chat. Better late than never. Thanks for joining us. Caleb says, heading to work now. Man, sleeping has not been great. Yeah, I'm with you on that, brother. It's been tough. It has been tough. Especially adjusting your body to doing overnight shifts. It's just not natural. So, and when I come home in the morning from this, 9 to 5:30, 6:30 shift, I'm so wound up. I got so much energy. It's hard to just put my head down the pillow and go to bed. And then I'm up for another 4 or 5 hours. And before you know it, I haven't got any sleep at all. So I'm trying to incorporate these live streams the best I can. So just bear with me while my body gets adjusted to this. Hopefully it won't be too much longer. Diaz says, what's up, folks? I'm still around. Good to see you, Diaz. Caleb, I'm all right. Doing all right tonight. But there's a lot to get to. So I want to start with a few things that I picked out as far as the market goes. And I'm going to do a check-in with Treys Trades. There's a YouTuber out there. I believe his name is The Plain Bagel. He's got a pretty big channel, like 900,000 subscribers. And he reached out to Trey like a month ago about the whole MEMESTOCK craze and AMC and GME. And Trey got back to him. So I'm going to play a little clip from that video. I have it. And I'm also going to play, which really disgusts me the most about the SEC right now. Jay Clayton was on CNBC the other day. I believe it was either Monday or Tuesday when we started running. And he was talking about market manipulation. And I'm going to play the clip from that video because I have it. Let me get the graphic up. first. So this is Jay Clayton. He's the former SEC chair. And he was, like I said, joining CNBC about a week ago. And I want to go over what he said about Roaring Kitty and the tweets that Roaring Kitty put out. And you're not going to believe this. But here we go. And hopefully I'll see volume pop up on this when we play it. Alrighty.
GameStop shares are soaring once again this morning, adding more than 170% just since yesterday morning.
Out of the world's most innovative teams.
Unbelievable.
To life. Smartsheet.
Another meme stock soaring along with GameStop is AMC. AMC is up 187% for the week to date. And of course, it's only Tuesday. Joining us right now with more on this is Jay Clayton. He is former SEC chair and a CNBC contributor. And Jay, we've been kicking this around this morning. I got a whole lot of different takes on this. First of all, the short sellers didn't learn their lesson last time around. Second of all, retail investors are back with a vengeance, but you can't really call this investing either. These are massive swings. As a former SEC chair, what do you think when you look at all of this?
Well, it bothers me. It bothers me on many levels. I think your last guest got it right. It's a lot closer to gambling than it is to trading, and it's certainly not investing. And, you know, is a tweet really investment advice? I think we've learned over the last 5, 6, 7 years that a tweet is really never investment advice.
Okay, so just remember what he just said there, because he's going to contradict himself in a minute. He says a tweet really investment advice.
It mentions it, the companies involved. I mean, that's what's so phenomenal to see massive moves like this when really it was just the implication that he may be sitting up and taking notice. That's the tweet we're talking about.
Yeah, and we can debate whether that's, you know, let's put it this way, whether it's legal or illegal or it's manipulation or not. But I have a question for Keith Gill, which is, why not tell people why you did it? Why not come on the show and say, are you saying that GameStop is now a good investment opportunity? You know, we don't know. What we know is that it triggered what I would say is euphoric and speculative buying among the retail community, which is never a great thing.
So this was a really interesting proposition put up by Matt Levine from Bloomberg yesterday. Just what about the idea if Keith Gill, Roaring Kitty, who tweeted this, were to have gone on and bought options ahead of time, tweeted this, and then made a lot of money based on everybody going into this and the price going up, is that illegal? It's not insider trading.
It's not insider trading. That's clear. Unless he's trading on his own information. That's why it's not insider trading. But is this something that we should be tolerating in our markets? You know, whether it's legal or illegal, I don't think so. And that's why I say, why doesn't he, you know, look,
what does that mean, not to tolerate? So the idea, I would think, is you look at this more in the context of market manipulation, right? And the question is, are you allowed to manipulate the market? People, by the way, publish things all the time and they say, hey, I like this stock, and they, you know, hope that other folks follow them. Is that market manipulation?
Generally not.
Maybe not. So what is the distinction in your mind as somebody who ran this department and who's looking at and cares about the integrity of these markets?
Well, that's why I'm saying, okay, we can discuss what are exactly the facts and circumstances around the publication of this tweet and the like. But in the meantime, if you care about the markets and you care about investing, come on this program.
Right.
Tell people why you did this.
From your lips. God bless you. We hope he does.
Yeah, but again, is there anything illegal about this or not? You may not like the way it looks.
You can't answer the question.
There's nothing illegal about saying I like a stock. There are things illegal about saying, you know, I like a stock and taking activity in the marketplace that's designed to, you know, drive behavior, indicate that prices are rising, and like those types of things are illegal.
Pumps aren't illegal necessarily.
But they can be and they cannot be. It depends on how you're doing it.
All right, so the thing that infuriates me and should infuriate you guys too the most about this is the whole way we got here, this meme stock craze, was because of market manipulation. Like, everyone's forgetting that they had shorted GME at 140% when the first run happened back in January 2021. So for the former SEC chair to come out and try to claim in any way, shape, or form that this is market manipulation is just baffling. I mean, the fact that he's on here crying to mainstream media, to legacy media, while they do the same thing. They bring guests on all the time to talk about the stocks that they like, to different investors, to hedge fund owners. They talk about many, many different stocks that could cause prices to run in or fall. We've seen it happen a multitude of times over the last 3 years or so. How this is any different? The only difference here is that Keith didn't even mention the stock. He didn't even say GME or AMC, or he didn't mention any meme stocks. He simply made some prophetic tweets or, speculative tweets. So the fact that they're on here boohoo, whining, crying, bitching, and moaning about, Keith putting a couple of tweets out for the first time. Let's not forget, he hadn't tweeted since June of 2021. And they got their pennies all in a bunch about, retail jumping in and piling in. And I think it's pretty fair to say that that price action, that move was not just strictly retail. There's no way that that was only retail investors. Certainly it had something to do with it, right? Because we saw there was an effect from him tweeting, right? We saw some bigger influencers out there, whether it be the Tate brothers or, Dave Portnoy or some of these other influencers, social media influencers who piled in on the stock. So, of course, it did drive the price to an extent. But I've heard a lot of other theories out there on what possibly could have happened with this stock pump. I saw some theories about leaps, and there was a few other things, but it certainly wasn't just retail investors. And make no mistake, the funds made money off this run as well. They certainly took profits. And I just find it baffling that they're on here complaining about retail investors, again, when he didn't even mention the name of the stock. Now, of course, we all know what the stock was that he was referring to in the tweet. But, he already was deposed by Congress. He came out and said what he had to say. He might have been the only person during that inquiry. I forget when it was. I want to say it was like September of 2021. He might have been the only person that was at that hearing that didn't perjure himself, in his testimony. Because we know that Tenev and Griffin both lied under oath about their communications on the days before the AMC and GME run-up. So, again, I just find it astonishing that these guys have the balls to come out here. And it's disrespect. And again, the reason we all are here and how we got into this space in the first place was based off market manipulation, not coming from retail investors, coming from institutional investors and hedge fund managers. It's just crazy to me that they're still going down with these lines. All right, let me get back to the graphic real quick. I've tried to remember to keep these graphics up. I don't know how I'm going to possibly remember to do this, but I see Tony in the chat. Tony, how you doing tonight? Hilsey's in the chat. What's going on? Tom, good evening. How you doing tonight? All right, let me pull up the video. So I told you guys right after we came on that there was a YouTuber out there by the name of the Plain Bagel. And I got to make sure I give him credit for this clip because this was something I just stumbled upon the other day. I guess he had made a video about some of the possibilities of, why GME was running and where it was going to go. And he had some interesting takes. And I can't go through all of them tonight, obviously. But during the I think it was like an 18 to 20 minute video, he mentioned he had reached out to Trey about a month ago to find out his thoughts on the whole, meme stock craze, whatever you want to label it as. So it's just a quick clip that I took out that I want to show you guys, because we haven't heard from Trey in a long time. And he's one of the big, I would say one of the larger influencers who definitely had an effect on me. I was following Trey from the first couple weeks when the whole thing popped off back in 2021. And, he kept me motivated. And I got to say this before I, go into the video, into the clip, that I don't believe there was any nefarious things going on with Trey. I believe genuinely, and you'll see from what he answered in the DM to the tweet, that I genuinely believe that he thought that retail had a shot to really turn this into, a MOAS or, the greatest short squeeze we've ever seen. I don't believe that he was doing this just to purely make money off of some of the options trades that he did. That was just, fortuitous, I think. And obviously he could see the momentum building. And he was a big part of that whole run up back in the summer of 2021. And, he got screwed over like a lot of other investors back in January when we lost the ability to buy stock. So I got to make sure I premise this by saying I don't believe, and you'll see how Trey responds to the question that Plain Bagel gives to him, but I believe he was genuine with all of his takes and everything he did until he left the space. Jana, how you doing tonight? I see Jenna in the chat. Good to see you, Jenna. All right, let's pop up this video. Like I said, it's just a real short clip that I took out from a very much longer video. And if you want, go over and give Plain Bagel a subscribe. He seems pretty knowledgeable, and I thought his video was really well done.
Alternatively, some influencers haven't gained an audience by pretending to be a multi-millionaire expert, but because they come across as an everyday Joe, just trying to make it with their finances like you or I. This is especially true when it comes to things like meme coin cryptocurrencies and meme stocks, where supporters actively reject conventional finance wisdom and instead subscribe to a more speculative theory or belief that if we all do a certain thing, we're all going to make it.
And if we get more people to buy it, the value goes up, right?
If everyone holds, then yes, it could go that high.
Unfortunately, while some influencers have really built their audience around these ideas and even become impromptu poster boys for these movements at times, they haven't often worked out. Take AMC, for example. Much like GameStop, it was a heavily shorted, struggling business that saw its stock price shoot up in value in early 2021, leading YouTubers like Treys, who had made a massive bet on the position, to suddenly find themselves in the limelight, with Trey himself, in a way, becoming the leader of the so-called AMC ape army. They call themselves that, I didn't make that up. Trey continued to post trading videos and even showed up on news channels to discuss AMC, ultimately arguing that AMC was on the cusp of a massive short squeeze. That never happened. The stock is down 98% from its peak and even roughly 50% from before the meme stocks rally. And Trey's channel went radio silent on the topic. I decided to reach out and ask him what had happened. And he responded. As time passed and I learned more, I realized I was wrong about a lot of my understanding of the market and understanding of how retail influences things. The culture that I had helped create around AMC, in my opinion, was not a very healthy one. And when I stepped away from everything, I didn't know how to address that culture without ruining my image in other people's minds. I enlisted them so that I wasn't fueling more of the unhealthy understanding of the market that I unfortunately helped create. It's an example of how someone genuinely interested in sharing information and who believes in their thesis can still contribute to the next set of issues highlighted by the CFA. Inappropriate or poor quality information, including recommendations and misinformation.
All right. So that was the clip there. Now, I thought it was extremely interesting because he showed the entire DM. So I'm going to see if we can read that. I'm going to pull it back up and pause it on that, and then I'll read the whole thing. For those of you who are listening can't see the screen right now, I'm going to read the exact.
Influencers haven't gained an audience by pretending to be a multi-millionaire.
Oh, you know what? Jeffrey, what's going on, man? Hang on one second, guys. I'm going to have to pull it up on the screen over here so I can read it, because I forgot when you download the video clip to Restream, you can't actually manipulate it to pause it or anything. So let me just go into YouTube real quick. I'll pull the video up and read it from there. Bear with me for 1 second. And then I'm going to get into the whole thing about stock manipulation and misinformation. I think that's important because I see the same things going on right now. And again, you know, and I've heard Tony say this many times, that the reason that, you know, some of us got in this space was to help dispel some misinformation, especially when it came to people making $100,000, $500,000 per stock, per share price predictions. I think that was one of the biggest things. And just, you know, realizing what the market cap would be and how much money it would take to close out all these shares at that kind of price. So let me get to that part of the video so I can make sure I can read it. All right. So this guy, Plain Bagel here, like I said, go over and give him a subscribe. He reached out to Trey to ask him about this, and this is what Trey said. He said, I can comment for sure, man. I started talking about AMC originally because I had felt like retail had an edge against some of the big Wall Street names and wanted to feel like I was contributing to the little guy winning. As time passed and I learned more, I realized I was wrong about a lot of my understanding of the market, understanding of how retail influences things. The culture that I helped create around AMC, in my opinion, was not a very healthy one. And when I stepped away from everything, I didn't know how to address that culture without ruining my image in other people's minds. I cared a lot about what others thought of me, so opted to just step away from everything instead of addressing it. I had also grown pretty mentally unstable because of the poor financial decisions and budgeting in my own life, and I felt I needed to recenter my value of money and what a dollar is actually worth. So, pretty insightful to see where Trey's mind is at right now. And I have to agree with him. And, you know, I think one of the biggest things about this space is taking responsibility for things. And there's plenty of things I've been wrong on in the past when I've either made videos or on my speculation on what's going to happen. And, you know, I have to live with that and own that. And I think it's one of the biggest reasons why I chose not to exit this position in the past, because of coming on here and having somewhat, obviously it's a lot smaller than Treys, but, you know, still, I felt a responsibility to stick to my guns. And at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen. I couldn't ever say how this was going to end. I still don't even know if this is totally over yet. I mean, we could see things change significantly with some of the things that are coming up. I can't say, right? But I think owning that is important. And, you know, I'm not trying to point Trey out. I'm just as guilty probably of that as he is. And not understanding how really small of an influence in the grand scheme of things that retail has on the market. Maybe more so on the meme stocks, we have a bigger impact, but overall in the market, I mean, you're talking about big money that is really moving things, and, you know, the algorithm. There's so many other ways that price action is determined. It's not just determined off supply and demand. Obviously, we've come to learn that very well since, you know, joining this community. I see some of the same things going on right now. And like I said, owning up to that is a big thing. And I think that takes, you know, some guts to do. But I see the same things going on right now. I see the technical analysis people who are coming out, I mean, that have been around for who knows how long now. I mean, forever, it seems like, that they've actually been posting. I see the people who are out there who are misinformed, right? The people who didn't know that there was an offering coming up from AMC. There's one guy in particular, I'm not going to mention his name, but I watched one of his videos last week. And I guess in his comments, people have been telling him not to buy AMC because Adam Aaron would try to kill any type of positive price action movement or try to kill any short squeeze with dilution and by a share offering. And he had no idea that had already been mentioned in the earnings call, or just to look back historically at AMC needing to raise capital at certain times because, the balance sheets weren't looking so good. So he went out and made a video about how he was going into AMC for this specific reason without knowing all the information. And, this is where I come back to myself, because back in June 2021, when we had the run up in those first couple of days of the month, I didn't know that those 20 million shares were still out there to be sold. I had no idea. And that was, bad on my part. That was me not doing the proper amount of due diligence and proper amount of research, because that came as a total shock to me when we woke up that morning and CNBC was saying that, there was 20 million shares that had just been offered at 60 or 50 or 40, whatever the price was, maybe even less. But I had no idea that those shares still existed to be sold. And, had I known that, would I have made a different decision at that time? Possibly. But I mean, if you go back and look at my video from that morning, I went running out to say that, this has to be okayed. This has to be signed off on by the investors, by all of us. This has to go to a vote. There's no way they can just do this without filing the proper paperwork ahead of time, and all the things that I said from that morning. And I was dead wrong. And, I hope I didn't sway anyone one way or the other that morning, but I possibly could have. And it definitely had an impact on my decision. But the fact that we still see it going on 3 years now from that time, and people not learning the lessons of being misinformed or giving bad information. And, just recently, in the last couple of days, he came out and made another video saying, everyone down in the comments told me that Adam Aaron would dilute. And I felt like just screaming into the screen saying, well, yeah, he announced it before we started running. There was a lot of speculation that he was going to make that move. And, if you had just done a little more research, and again, this is something I'm guilty of myself, you would have known that. But the fact that we still see it going on 3 years after the fact is it's bothersome. And, if it has an influence on someone, especially when we're talking about finances and people's money, it's not something you want to mess with, right? It's why I try to say, you got to take emotions out of this. I mean, just think back to last Monday when I came on after we had that massive move. I think last Monday was a 100% move. And I just said, I'm not impressed. And, ultimately, I don't think this is, it wasn't a huge move. Besides seeing that my brokerage account had doubled in value, it really didn't do much for me. And if I had got all emotional about it, here we are a week on later. And what did we close at? GME. I mean, it certainly came back down to earth, right? So AMC closed the day at 483, down almost 3% in after hours. And GME, man, I mean, at one point, didn't it run to $80? So we've smashed off 75% of that run. Down 23.14, up 4% on the day. AMC closed up almost 10% on the day. So overall, a good day, but we are far from where we were a week ago. And I just wish people would learn from some of these lessons that all of us had to learn the hard way. Because I see new investors out there now following these guys and basing some of their decision making off what they're telling them. It's unfortunate. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's what's happening right now. And I don't think much will change until we somehow get to the end of this. Fahrenheit 2021, what's going on? Tony says, what is the SEC guy is just running cover of the bigger op? Tom says, no one noticed till after the move was made, so it was not us. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that, Tom. A lot of people are saying that had nothing to do with retail. I'm sure there was a little bit of... Jana says she's doing well. That's good, Jana. Good to see you tonight. Tom says Trey was still in the military and they probably had him go a certain way. Yeah, and him, him being able to get to Adam Aaron and get Adam Aaron on to those couple, live streams that they did together, that had a big influence on me as well, right? Because looking at it from the perspective of retail, seeing the CEO come on to a social media personality's platform and address some of the concerns or, however you want to describe those live streams, certainly was something that, swayed my opinion on the whole movement. And getting this sense that the CEO was behind us. Now, understanding that he wasn't necessarily in it for any type of MOAS or short squeeze, but he was trying to better the fundamentals of the company was something I had to learn the hard way. And him, how many times did he come to retail looking for ways to raise capital through, allowing a share offering and them to issue more shares back when the price was astronomically high and certainly didn't base and was not based off of any type of fundamentals at all, but might have saved us a lot of pain down the road that we now experienced, right? And not knowing better and maybe a little bit of greed and some selfishness saying, no way, you can't dilute this stock. And, ultimately it ended up happening anyways, right? There was no stopping it. And just lessons learned. I hope that some of these guys understand that, there's probably new retail investors who just got in recently. I'm sure there's probably a lot of them who possibly jumped on and saw all the craze and the excitement. I mean, that one tweet from Roaring Kitty had like 22 million views on it. So we're not talking about all guys who have been in this for 3 years. Certainly not. There was definitely some people who are probably just getting a position or just buying in at, in the last 7 to 10 days. And, this, whatever happens the next couple of days, I think it's important to remember that this is certainly different than what we were seeing in 2021. There's so many different variables that are not the same as 2021. The stimulus money being one of them. I saw this article here from Yahoo Finance. Let me put this up. I believe he was, Vander Research. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. So it says Vander Research crunched the numbers and reported in a note to clients that GameStop and AMC have only seen a fraction of the inflows experienced in early 2021. Flows into these names at the peak of the early 2021 frenzy were over four times Monday's volume. And I think if I remember correctly, I think the volume was like almost 500 million on last Monday. He says, do we think more retail traders can jump in on the trend in the coming days? Yes. Do we think this is a repeat of 2021? No. And the chances we reach that stage are low, said Vanda. He says, without glancing at a single stock chart, it's easy to point out that 2021 was likely a historical aberration fueled by board recipients of pandemic stimulus checks. And certainly that, I think, is something we got to think about, that possibly had a huge influence on what happened during that time, right? And that's certainly true. He says, as of Monday's close, the portion of share turnover in GameStop attributed to retail investors averaged 7% over the prior 5 days. That number was only slightly higher for AMC. In 2021, the averages and spikes were materially higher, indicating much greater participation by retail. Data in the options market confirms a similar story, but the biggest difference this year might just be the lack of one single coherent narrative like the meme story that captured headlines back in 2021. It says only last week we wrote about the recent resurgence of volatility in meme names and a critical break from prior trading epochs. Much of the recent meme stock volatility is being fueled by material news and fundamentals like earnings, as opposed to Reddit posts he read. And something else that he mentioned, or maybe it wasn't him, but someone mentioned, I saw this. It might have even been this article here. So this is from Investors Business Daily. It says GME stock stumbles on Q1 preview. Top short seller returns. Robinhood sees major upgrade. So they went in to talk about GameStop here and some of their the offering that just came out. And again, this was something that both AMC and GME did, right? They both went out and made offerings after this run. They talk about Citron Research here. If you don't remember, back in the day, this was one of the big short sellers, the guys out there who were kind of shooting down any possibility of some type of squeeze. And they go on to talk about, you know, shorting the stock and how they don't think this is like 2020 or 2021. He says the big guys are still doing okay, noting founders of the other hedge funds that shorted GameStop in 2021 now own professional sports franchises. I don't know what Boo Boo Kitty owns, Left said. And I think, you know, one of the biggest things that was mentioned, and now I, of course, don't know where it is, was that Wall Street wasn't prepared. They weren't ready for what happened back in 2021. They've had 3 years now to fix any issues they could possibly have with a massive short squeeze catching them with their pants down. And I think that's important also for us to all remember, just, you know, how they've been able to adapt, find other loopholes, other gray areas that they can exploit in order to suppress price action. It might not necessarily just be naked shorting of what, you know, which we all believed was one of the big causes for this whole craze in the first place. There's other possibilities that could be happening. And I think, you know, forgetting about those variables is something that, you know, when this whole thing pops off and when these runs happen, the euphoria is so great that we don't take into consideration, you know, the other aspects that maybe is a key driver for price. Ivan the car guy says, Mass, what's your take on Congress trying to cancel the CAT system? They had a closed door meeting today. So I just saw that there was a video. I think Boss did a video about it. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I was getting ready for the live tonight, going over some of these video clips, trying to clip them out, get these things ready. So I don't know, obviously, if there was a closed meeting. We have no idea what was said. So we're going to have to figure out what exactly was said during that meeting. That's the important thing. But the fact that they had one is certainly interesting. You know, Yellen said back in 2021, and I think this came out in the GameStop report that the SEC did too, that, you know, they definitely are keeping an eye on what retail is doing. You know, this could have been a major, had the brokers not stepped in and taking away the buy button, you could have seen a massive, you know, hedge funds out there falling, just like Melvin did. Who knows how high the stock prices would have gone had that not happened. And of course, no one was punished for it. No one received any type of, we got slaps on the wrist from everyone after what they did. And then on top of that, going into this congressional hearing that they held and perjuring themselves in front of Congress on top of it, there were no repercussions. And even if there were, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars, maybe even more, that could have been lost. So in the grand scheme of things, them getting a fine, is that really going to stop what they're doing? No. Until we start locking people up for crimes like everyone else does when you commit a crime, every other average Joe on the street, if they go in and rob a bank, or if they pass a faulty check, or, you know, they, whatever the case may be, there are repercussions for that, and it keeps people from doing things. Just think about right now in the terms of some of these more liberal cities and the policies they have on crime and theft and retail theft. If you're going to make that under $1,000 is a non-punishable crime, and you're going to be released on your own recognizance within a couple hours, Where is the incentive to stop doing it? There is none. You just make sure that that number is under whatever the specified digit is, $999. You're literally legalizing, incentivizing crime. And I feel like that's the same thing that's been going on a larger scale with Wall Street for the last couple decades. I mean, since at least the banking crisis, from what I can remember back in 2008. And I know it goes back further than that, but I just don't, I wasn't paying attention back then because I was too young. But as long as this is incentivized and allowed to continue, I don't see any reason that they're going to stop. Floyd, how you doing tonight? Super Steven says, are we going to make it mass? How you doing, Steven? Ivan the car guy says 90% of retail are still in red with AMC. Yeah, Ivan, which is exactly why I didn't make a big deal out of that little run-up the other day. To me, it wasn't a huge deal. I got to stop rocking my chair. I just realized it was squeaking like crazy. Joanne says, I don't think it's over by any means. I think DFV's comeback was to let us know it's not over. I hope not, Joe. Like I said, holding on this whole time was not an easy decision, and it certainly set me back a good amount. But, that decision to sell, when I've been sitting here saying that, I still believe in this company and the CEO and retail investors in general, I couldn't get there. And so, taking the loss and going down with the ship, although we haven't sold yet, a lot of us. So we're not necessarily gone down with the ship. We're definitely hanging over the side on a lifeboat, though, if we could put it that way as an analogy. Bucks fan, how you doing tonight? Good to see you, my man. He says, welcome back. Bucks fan, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Tom says, both ran about 500%. When does anything get to run that much? I think, you mean back in 2021, Tom? Yeah, it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate to see. And look, this is part of the business, right? GME and AMC need to better the books. No matter how we slice it, right now they both need cash. Well, I guess GME doesn't need cash that bad, but they're taking advantage of the situation and strengthening, their numbers, which I understand. I just saw that there's and look, both of these companies have some issues as far as the future goes and what their plans are. I gotta say, for AMC and the movie industry and the gaming industry and GME, they both have issues right now that are coming from the top down, not the bottom up. There was something that just happened. Probably most of you guys know what Assassin's Creed is, I would assume. It's a really big gaming franchise from a company called Ubisoft. And there's been a lot of anticipation about their latest game, which is called Shadows. And this game has a setting in samurai Japan, which is somewhere that the franchise has not been before. Let me pull this up real quick. So this is Ubisoft. You're talking about one of the biggest gaming companies out there. And they just released the first trailer for this game. Let me blow this up for those of you guys that can see. Okay. So it says Assassin's Creed Shadows already has some gamers angry over its online requirement and pricing, but part of that ongoing fan backlash appears to have been misguided, with Ubisoft already clarifying that Assassin's Creed Shadows will in fact be playable offline from start to finish. Following a year's worth of fans' requests on Assassin's Creed entry into a feudal Japan, Ubisoft has greenlit such a game, confirming its existence on the 15th anniversary of the franchise in September of 2022. Its pre-orders went live immediately afterward, which is when some fans noticed that its PlayStation Store page listed as an online play required game. Again, if that's the case, it's going to have some battles to do with owning physical games and their whole involvement with brick and mortar stores of GME, of GameStop. It says it won't always have an online requirement, but they also had some, and again, these prices are extremely high. I think it ran from $70 or $69.99 to $130 with some DLC content. And there was also a bunch of backlash because of the characters. So far, all of the Assassin's Creed games, if you followed the storyline, they've gone all over the world. They did it in the Vikings time, from like Norse mythology. They went to ancient Greece and the Spartan times. They've done the 1770s in New England during the Revolution. You played as a Native American assassin. In Greece, you played as a Spartan warrior. When they did it in Italy, you played as an Italian. But this game, they're in feudal Japan, as the article pointed out, and the main protagonist, and I believe there's two. It's Yasuke, who is an actual historical person, and then there's a Japanese woman, who I think are the two ways that you can play the game. I'm not that huge into Assassin's Creed. I do know a little bit about it, but again, it says Assassin's Creed Shadows is set in Japan and is led by a black man, Yasuke. Despite Yasuke being a real person, there have been cries of historical inaccuracy in a series where George Washington founded America to aid his quest for a magic apple. The attack line seems to have resorted to how insulting it is they aren't playing as a Japanese man, that they'd rather be cool with a person like Yasuke if the game was set in Africa. I think we all know that isn't really true. He says, he goes on to talk about the Origins game being taken place in Egypt, and you played as an Egyptian. But yeah, I understand why there's some backlash against this. Why they would do this, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. A lot of people online are making arguments that it has something to do with woke diversity. And is that possible? Yeah, absolutely 100%. We've seen it now affect the movie theaters, and it's kind of sneaking its way into gaming recently. And this is going to have a major effect on people wanting to go out and purchase this game, especially with pre-orders. I mean, just to get the game a couple days in advance. This is going to, all these type of things, this ideology that they're imposing on all of us, it's having its effects. So much so that I just saw an article that Target is not going to do Pride Month this year because they can't afford the backlash, right? Last year, when that whole controversy went viral, they lost billions in market cap over a week or so. And this year, because of inflation and because of, consumer buying being down, because half of us or most of us just don't have the extra money lying around right now to be frivolously spending. This is going to affect, it's had its effect on Target. And Target decided to take a step back this year and not focus on that because they just simply can't afford it. They can't afford the backlash, which I guess to an extent is a good thing because that shows that, we can still have an effect if we don't, believe in something and think that it shouldn't be. And, again, with the LGBTQ community, I have my issues with a lot of the stuff that's directed towards kids. And I think that's what a lot of the people did with the Target situation last summer. Anyone who went into a Target, you could see that they were literally, propagandizing. They were making this stuff for little kids who don't even understand what the hell it means. And they caught a lot of shit for it. And it seems like that combined with the economy right now is having its effect on Target. And good. I'm glad I don't want to see little kids getting involved with that. You know, they can make those decisions when they get older. I don't think it's something the Target should be taking a position on one way or the other. Mopar Invention says buy the dip. Joanne said AMC was still silly low even with that run. People can say AMC's balance sheets look bad, but they look bad because the stock is so artificially low. And yeah, that's and they're having some issues with raising money, and they're also having the effects of what's going on in Hollywood. Like, we can't just dismiss the fact that, you know, Disney came out and their their biggest 5 releases last year did not make money. They lost billions of dollars in the theaters, as well as on top of that, streaming. They lost billions more in streaming, which, you know, being an AMC shareholder, I don't care that much about. I don't care if Disney is losing money. But being a fan of the movie theaters and being a shareholder of AMC, I don't like to see that they've made these massive mistakes and they continue to do it. It hasn't stopped yet, no matter how bad they've taken a hit, whether it be the stock price or people just saying, I'm not going to spend my money at the movie theater. And again, that's affecting the bottom line of AMC on top of what happened last year with the strike. We're seeing a lot of setbacks that couldn't have been anticipated back in 2021 when a lot of us got into this stock. I had no idea that they were going to send Disney down this road where all these people infiltrated their, you know, corporate offices and decided to start pushing this agenda. Had I known that, might I have made different decisions? Possibly. I don't know. Maybe I just would have got caught up in the hype no matter what. But, you know, it's something you can't predict. Although now I'd be very scared to invest in Disney. I don't care what the price is until they start changing their philosophy. And, you know, actions speak louder than words. I've seen Bob Iger go on now multiple times. Every time it seems like there's an earnings call and they have to come out and give some bad news, or they're fudging the numbers in order to, you know, prop up the stocks to make it look better than it is, and not including some of the tax breaks that they're taking advantage of, or using those tax breaks from filming over in London to fudge numbers, whatever it is. I think they're being a little disingenuous, and I really haven't seen any massive change yet in their stance and their political stance. I mean, they're having issues with, it seems like, every franchise and every IP that they own, whether it's MCU, whether it's Lucasfilm and the Force is Female, which we're about to get in, 2 weeks, I believe. They're going to launch the first non-binary character in Star Wars to lead a series, directed by Leslie Headland, who is the former personal assistant of Harvey Weinstein. I mean, why they are Disney is attaching their name and their studios to these type of people and this type of storyline, I don't know. But the director has been very clear about what she anticipates and what her thoughts were about directing this new show for streaming for Disney, and what her agenda is. And it's not about the storytelling or about creating a amazing character and following, you know, the lore and canon of Lucasfilm. See if I can pull this up. Yeah, here we go. This is nuts. All right. Says, this is from That Park Place. This is from 2 months ago. The Acolyte showrunner Leslie Headland implies the show is a lesbian series with a Star Wars veneer. A resurfaced interview Leslie Headland gave at Star Wars Celebration last year sees the showrunner implying that her series is a lesbian show with a Star Wars veneer. She says there, this is very strange. There was just something about the relationship in Frozen between the sisters The like devilization of the classic kind of fairy tale bad guy, you know, the concept of true love being between two sisters and not a heterosexual relationship. It just destroyed me completely. She continued, and I thought, gosh, I would love to make something like this, for a lack of better term, Disney, meaning something that my parents would have allowed me to see, would not have allowed me to see when I was younger as a queer person, but I would be able to understand as a queer person. And I think I would have had a completely different life. And so I was inspired, and it was like, God, I would love to make a story like this. And so far, that's what we're getting. She had pitched the idea, The Acolyte. And so when I was developing the original idea to Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm, you know, it can't just be that. When you're pitching Star Wars, you have to pull George Lucas in as well. I can't just be like, well, I'm referencing, especially if you're going to set something during the High Republic. On and on and on. Again, not focusing on story, focusing on agenda and ideology. And the thing got ratioed into submission, as it should. I don't know what it's going to take for Disney to learn their lesson. Andrew, how you doing tonight? Says you can't spell MOS without mass. Good to see you back on, brother. Andrew, good to be back with you guys. So unfortunate where we are today. I mean, you know, and this isn't, I hate getting prepared for some of these live streams. I mean, I love coming on and hanging out with you guys and talking about some of this stuff, but it just seems to always be that, you know, there's some kind of negative news trying to push positivity when it just seems like everything is adapting in the opposite direction as you would think. It's tough sometimes. All right, let me get to a couple comments here. Will, how you doing tonight? Jesse, good to see you. Says, nice to see you back streaming regularly, Mass. Jesse, it's good to be back, man. It's been a little tough with these overnights, but my body's starting to get used to it, and I don't know how much longer I'll be doing this. Like I said, I'm waiting to hear back about a job offer that would take me back to daytimes, and I'm praying to God, keep your fingers crossed for me, guys, that I get this job, because it would be a dream job. I saw, I think it was WGN Chicago, did a story just a couple nights ago, and there was a study that was done by a doctor, I want to say in Minnesota or Wisconsin, about working the overnight shift, whether it be policemen or, you know, forklift operators, nurses, EMTs, and how that working that shift literally is killing you, because the body, it can mess with all types of things inside the body, as far as like diabetes and just, you know, your normal sleep patterns and brain function. And I saw that and I'm like, man, that is that my sign that I shouldn't be doing this? Because it does feel like that. It does feel like that sometimes. Argos Reed, good to see you tonight. Says hit the like button. Yeah, I'd appreciate if you guys hit the like button. Caleb says they've been testing the CAT system. And when's that supposed to go into effect? Like, I want to say a couple days, right? The 24th or 28th, I think was the date that I saw. I'm a professional who's in the chat tonight. Good to see you, man. Javi, what's going on? I'm a professional says, Joe, and that's literally not proof that people are pumping money into stock right now. People haven't been buying enough at the right time for years. I guess I would agree with that to an extent, right? I'm a professional. I mean, there certainly wasn't as much. We can look at the numbers to see what the volume was. I think we did 4 or 5 times that back in 2021. Today on AMC GME, pull the volume up. AMC did 5 million in volume. I believe that's after hours. 47 million in daytime for GME and 75 for AMC. So we're at like a quarter. No, not even. 20% of what we did last Monday. And like I said, I've heard a lot of theories about what could be going on there. I believe it was JP Morgan. I want to say JP Morgan who bought E-Trade or something to that effect. I think I heard Bigham's talking about it the other night at work. But yeah, I certainly think that there was definitely some institutional investing going on there and some profit taking from the big guys. No doubt about that. It wasn't just strictly retail. I don't believe that. Joe says AMC most popular stock of the last 3 years, market cap $1 billion or less. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. Carl J. Joe says that's proof the whole thing is a joke right there. Oh, I definitely know there's a lot of retail buying right now. I mean, I can see it going over some of the other videos of some of the guys who are out there making consistent content on AMC doing, or GME, doing like daily updates. You can see it in the comments. I mean, and these, it seems, doesn't seem like these are bots. It seems that these are real people who have just said they've entered or just got into the stock market or just started investing. So there's definitely still an interest from retail. I don't believe that that's gone at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. Joe says the whole thing is a sham that we can be objectively revealed. Can't believe anyone else still pretends that's not the case. Yeah, I definitely, look, I'm not going to deny that there's that stuff going on. There's no doubt about it that that's happening. Now, whether that was the case with the run-up we just saw recently and the rundown that came after it, I don't know. I'm not sure. All right, I'm going to jump over some geopolitics for a second, because I think this is important to keep your eyes on. All right. So today, or I believe it was yesterday. Hang on, let's pull this up. If you don't know, China just sold a record amount of debt treasuries, $53.5 billion in U.S. treasuries. I'm going to pull up this video. Putin and Xi right now are meeting, I believe in Shanghai. Oh, no. Where are they meeting? Well, here's the video. A few days, did I have volume? Yeah. A few days after they had this meeting. And I'm going to go in and talk about what happened during this meeting and what they talked about. So the article here from Reuters says China and Russia are facing their own challenges, including a slowing Chinese economy and an emboldened expanding NATO following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Washington casts China as its big and Russia as its biggest nation-state threat. The U.S. views both as authoritarian rulers who have quashed free speech and exerted tight control at home over the media and all the courts. And I find this laughable that this is the position that the United States is taking. This administration is taking on what's going on in the country and comparing, China and Russia, saying they're authoritarian for quashing free speech and exerting tight control at home over the media and the courts. Think about that for a second, what they're saying. So this is an administration who went out specifically, took 50 former CIA intelligence officers and prodded them onto legacy media to say that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, which had a definite effect on our election, They did that with state-owned media. I understand it's still considered free press, but literally, there's only one network, two or three smaller ones who have any non-bias or are showing any type of neutralism when it comes to geopolitics. And then you have the court system and the DOJ, which is being weaponized against a political opponent, like we're some type, like we're Venezuela or one of these other countries, Russia or China in particular, being weaponized in these sham trials that are all falling apart, just a few months before the election. So it's a little hypocritical that they're coming out here and calling out the Xi Jinping and Putin regimes as being crazy sons of bitch, killers, dictators, and that they are quashing free speech, media, and the courts, when this administration is doing the exact same thing. It's wild to me that this is continuing and that they're taking this stance. I mean, talk about hypocrisy. Goes on, the joint statement was described as deepening the strategic relationship and mentioned plans to step up military ties and how defense sector cooperation between the two nations improved regional and global security. It singled out the United States for criticism. The quote is, the United States still thinks in terms of the Cold War and is guided by the logic of bloc confrontation, putting the security of narrow groups above regional security and stability, which creates a security threat for all countries in the region. The statement said, the U.S. must abandon this behavior. It also condemned initiatives to seize assets and property of foreign states, a clear reference to Western moves to redirect profits from frozen Russian assets or the assets of themselves, or the assets themselves to help Ukraine. So if we just look, I'm going to put this chart up at the divestment from China. Okay, so this chart here is showing the billions in debt that China is dumping. And you can see the most they've ever dumped is in 2024. And if you look back historically at the second largest dump, which would be back in 2015, that was right after the coup in Ukraine and Russia's invasion of the Crimea, and the first time that the Obama administration put sanctions on Putin and Russia. And so when China saw that, they decided to dump a bunch of U.S. debt. That was the first time they did it. Now, you can also see they had a massive dump off at the end of 2019. And now in 2024, as again, we are putting massive sanctions on some of their BRICS allies. So this is not good. And they are talking about using the BRICS currency now to de-dollarize, get out of the US dollar, dump their treasuries, and that means all that debt comes back home. I mean, we have been living large for the last 70 years since the end of World War II because the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world. And once that paper money comes back here, we are dealing with it. And if you think inflation is high now, wait till other countries, especially BRICS countries, start to drop the dollar and trade in the gold-backed BRICS currency. Okay, and then just to make the point clear, going back to 2015, these are the gold holdings for China in reserves, okay? Steady increase since 2015, up, and up, up. the last 10 years, they have been stockpiling gold in order to back this currency that BRICS is going to bring and start using to trade as they slowly get themselves out of the dollar. And, regardless of what you think of China, they're getting ahead of the game here. They are looking around, seeing what the U.S. is doing to some of these other countries, the sanctions they're putting on, them taking money straight from these Russian oligarchs. And, however you feel about that is fine, but facts don't care about your feelings. This is not good for the United States. This is bad. And I don't think people are making a big enough deal out of this. I mean, literally for the last 75, 80 years, having the US dollar as the reserve currency and the only way you can trade commodities has allowed us to continue to print money at an astronomical rate. It's the only reason we've been able to do that without going into a massive, massive recession. But as some of these BRICS countries, these larger nations, start to de-dollarize to get rid of the dollar and trade in other currencies, especially this new BRICS currency that's backed by gold, that's going to have a massive impact on us back home. And you're seeing it right now. You're seeing it happen with China. And again, say what you will about Trump, but the reason that this coalition between Russia and China is happening is because this administration is literally driving them into each other's arms. One thing about Trump was he was a businessman, It just isn't good. Not at all. And seeing that kind of massive dump off on U.S. Treasuries, if that continues at a large scale, it will be something to behold here in this country on how bad inflation gets. And, condemning the United States for what's going on, what we're doing right now, getting involved. I mean, I just don't feel like we have any business. This last spending bill that they came out with, the one that they went into Congress at midnight on a Sunday to pass, when they were waving Ukrainian flags on the floor of Congress, they're shipping all that money over to Israel, to Taiwan, and to Ukraine, money that would be better spent here, building roads and bridges and, maybe fixing some of the ports so we stop having barges crashing into all of our bridges and destroying our infrastructure. Instead of doing those things, we're sending them over to fund these wars, and it's driving our political opponents and our rivals, our military rivals, to, rely on each other to stand up to the West. And they're calling it out here. In this joint statement, they're calling it out, saying that the U.S. needs to stop being so much of a warmonger around the world. Stop funding all of these frivolous wars that are getting a lot of people killed. I mean, if war breaks out in China between China and Taiwan, because the Chinese don't see the U.S. as legitimate, having an influence in Taiwan, which they already do. We already know the CIA is there right now. And we'll talk about the CIA in a minute and what just happened in Africa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But, people are sick and tired. Some of these other countries are tired of the U.S. and their hegemony, implying their will across the world, across the globe. We got 800 military bases spread out all over the place. And, we're not in the Cold War anymore. There's no reason we need to be fearing these countries. We should be doing business with them. The trades and everything that, the globalization and free markets depend on there being some type of trust between these world leaders, and they don't trust the U.S. anymore. Watching all these sanctions happen, watching all these confiscations of capital, It's making them divert their money elsewhere, and that is going to be pain for the U.S. economy. Whether or not you agree with their political stance, and honestly, I don't see that much of a difference right now between what China and what is happening in China, Iran, and Russia, as happening with this administration in the U.S. right now. It's problematic. In the article, it says, Beijing, once the junior partner to Moscow, remains by far the most powerful of Russia's friends and its top buyer of crude. That closeness has perturbed some in the Russian elite who fear that Russia is now too dependent on China, with which the Soviet Union came to the brink of war in 1969 over a border dispute. Xi said both sides agreed that a political settlement to the Ukraine crisis was the right direction, and the joint statement said both countries were opposed to a drawn-out conflict. So here you have China being the moderator here, and the not thick-headed one who's saying, we need to call out and get some peace going here. Putin, who arrived on Thursday for a 2-day visit, said he was grateful to China for trying to solve the Ukraine crisis, adding that he would brief Xi on the situation there, where Russian forces are advancing on several fronts, describing his initial talks with Xi as warm and camaraderie. He outlined sections where the two countries were strengthening ties, from nuclear energy and energy cooperation to food supplies and Chinese car manufacturing in Russia. It is unclear whether Putin will make any more further stops in China. Yeah, this just spells disaster for the U.S. economy. If this continues, we are in deep, deep trouble. And I don't know how much Trump is going to be able to fix this, if they even let him get into the White House. Maybe it'll bring some stability back to the region. But as far as the U.S. dollar goes, and it's being used as, the trading currency for commodities, we're on a slippery slope right now. Very slippery. I see Tony talking about Meta and their market cap. All right, let me get caught up on the comments here. Tony says, I deleted my Facebook. Too much bullshit. See you, Moses, in the chat. Good to see you too. Moses says, just a carnival game rigged for the rich. Look, can you make money in the market right now? Of course. But you got to be on top of your game. You got to be in the trenches, doing your research, knowing the numbers. Relying on someone's YouTube video as far as matching patterns back from 2021, or trying to, show you a technical analysis of why AMC is going to $120 next week, or GME, or whatever the stock is, FFIE. When has that worked in the past? It takes a lot more than just being able to read a chart in order to make money in the market. And even then, you're going to have a tough time going up against the hedge funds and just institutional investors in general. Whales who are spending big time money and moving price action. Our professional says, Joe, and 4 to 5 million is not verifiable. Last AA update was 3 something. And he said, saying how many on earnings, which means it's going down. And yes, it's rigged, but you knew that was going on. From day one. We knew that since GME was shorted at 140%. Tony says, my new favorite company to hate is Netflix. Getting tired of poorly dubbed content they buy cheap from other countries. Yeah, there is a lot of that going on, Hunty. A lot of stuff from overseas that's it's poorly dubbed. Some of the closed caption doesn't even make any sense, right? Jesse says, gamers know to never buy a game on pre-order anymore. So much trash. Yeah, you're basically beta testing, Jesse, if you buy the game before it hits the market and people have a chance to try it. Cancel Bubble says, don't get that they wouldn't want an African Assassin's Creed either. There was an Assassin's Creed based in Egypt. Right. Which I know sometimes a lot of people don't associate necessarily. It's not sub-Saharan Africa, right? We're talking about a more Middle Eastern vibe when you come to the Mediterranean shores. But yeah, that's correct. Joe says, my point is Wall Street is determined to not award us any value for the money we're pumping into a very popular stock. GME as well. They say the sentiment is worth nothing. That's what they were trying to express on CNBC, right? And a lot of these guys who are short now, Citron and some of these other companies, that's exactly what they are saying. Exact same thing. All right, I'm going to jump to one quick story, also kind of geopolitical, but also political, about us. Now, I don't know if you guys saw the story or not, but let me pull this up. So this happened about 10 hours ago. Democratic Republic of Congo's army says 3 Americans among those behind coup attempt that was nipped in the bud. I'm going to read a little bit of this article. And just remember, while I'm reading this, Democratic Republic of Congo has 70% of the world's cobalt reserves, which is one of the main minerals or materials you need to fund the EV explosion that we're supposed to see from this infrastructure bill, the Build Back Better bill that we got back in 2021, which I believe they put aside $50 billion for EV charger stations to be built, a large network across the country. And I saw 2 days ago, they built 7 so far. 7 out of, I believe, 50,000 was the number. Says the Democratic Republic of Congo's army said it foiled the coup attempt early Sunday and arrested the perpetrators, including several foreigners, following the attacks on the presidential palace and the residence of a close ally of Congo's president that left 3 people dead in the capital of Kinshasa. Officials said 3 U.S. nationals were among those behind the alleged plot, but their identities and whereabouts remained unclear Monday morning. Local media initially identified the armed men as Congolese soldiers, but then reported they were linked to a self-exiled opposition figure, Christian Malanga, who later posted a video on Facebook threatening President Felix Tshisekedi from within the presidential palace. Malanga was killed at the palace after resisting arrest. Congolese army spokesman Brigadier General Sylvain Ekenge told the Associated Press. Ekenge said Sunday on state television the attempted coup d'etat was nipped in the bud by Congolese defense and security forces, and the situation is under control. He later told the AP that 3 Americans were among the perpetrators, including the son of Malanga. Let me see if I have the video. I think I might. Yeah, I have some video footage. I'll show you guys. And this must be scary as hell for these guys. I don't know if they are involved. In the past, it has been. And there's been no response yet I've seen from the State Department at all about what's going on with these guys. So that's the passport there that they pulled off one of these guys. Now, again, I don't know if this is CIA involvement or not, but they have been known in the past to get involved with some coups. U.S. Ambassador to the DRC, Lucy Tamlin, said on social media she was shocked and concerned by reports of American citizens allegedly involved. You know, you really got to ask yourself, what would be the motivation for these guys to go over to the Dominican Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, in an attempted coup? She said the U.S. would cooperate with Congolese authorities. The alleged coup attempt also came amid a crisis within Tshisekedi's ruling party over an election for the parliament's leadership that was supposed to be held Saturday, but was postponed. Now, there's been a bunch of run-ins and issues between the DR Congo and United States recently. Some events that have taken place as far as them not wanting to bend to the will of, the United States and some of the other Western nations in the European Union specifically. So I don't know what these guys would have been doing there. I guess, money could be one thing if they're soldiers of fortune. But to me, this stinks CIA all over it. Stinks. And I saw someone in the chat say, this is pretty Bush League, having your passport on you. I agree with that 100%. So that seems that might seem that wouldn't match up with traditional CIA op. I don't think these guys would be carrying their passports with them. Although you never know, because of what happened in Venezuela just a few years ago. If you remember, there was an attempted coup there of the president in Venezuela. And there were American guys who were captured in that failed coup. And I'm pretty sure they were CIA. They were abandoned. And they had their passports on them. So for whatever reason, and I don't plan to say that I know what the hell the CIA is thinking, but Jesse says Disney is so dumb they'll make a Jar Jar Binks movie. Wow, I'm way behind the comments. Sorry, guys. Vern Dog, how you doing tonight? Good to see you, my man. Shamanic Soul Sister San Maria says, I worked overnight as a nurse for 11 years and have been out of it for 2 years and starting to finally come up with fight or flight. This is a sign we ain't meant to be up all night working. I agree with you, Sam, 100%. It's not good on your body, that's for sure. Joe says, I've missed mass. Real vibes here. Thanks, man. Harry Parrott, how you doing tonight? It says, concerning movies, until someone gets the guts, stop remaking old movies. That's the problem, Harry Parrott, I think, right? There's no originality. They are creatively bankrupt. These people don't have any ideas of their own. They only know how to rehash and retell stories for a modern audience now. And that is a major issue with moviegoers. People are not going to back this shit for long. I mean, there's only so many times they can keep regurgitating these storylines, and people are, getting fed up with it. Look at what happened with the last 5 big motion pictures for Disney. All massive, massive failures. When you're talking about budget compared to how much they made back in from the ticket sales. Create new content and do not offend the viewing public. Movies, entertainment are stuck. Yeah. Billy87 says, glad to see you back, Mass. I worked overnight as a doorman for 8 years. I don't think I could ever do it again. Billy, good to see you, man. Yeah, it's rough. It really is rough on your body. Like I've never done that before. It certainly takes a toll. Carl J says Schwab bought TD Ameritrade. Okay, that was the transaction I was talking about earlier. That could have had some issues. I'm Professional says, so where's DFV? That's a good question. Let me see. Has he posted anything on Twitter recently? I actually haven't looked. I can't believe I have 6 nights in a row of work. Talking about this overnight thing just got me thinking. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to work 6 nights this week. Let's see. His last post. Let me pull it up. Looks like was from May 17th. So it's been 4 days since he posted. And the last thing I see here is something to do with ET. Imagine if they try to remake ET. How could they fix that for today's modern audience with DEI? Yeah, he hasn't posted anything in a little bit. So good question. Where is he? And again, I don't blame him for getting people back with the meme stock run last week. I mean, he's just a small part of this. And, you know, he was saying that in that first original tweet that he was paying attention to what was going on. He was looking at, you know, some of the price action and just bringing attention to it. There's nothing illegal about that. And again, for those of you who saw Dumb Money or know this story, he likes the stock. And again, he's the only guy who didn't perjure himself in front of Congress back during those hearings in 2021. So I'm not going to put any of this on Roaring Kitty, especially since he's from Massachusetts, the greater Boston area. Joanne says, hell yeah, Mass. Smith says, Target doing for woke parents just like cat food with colors. Prometheus, good evening. How you doing tonight, my friend? Good to see you, buddy. Gorilla Grodd is in the chat. Kennedy Elise. Kenny the big goof at Citadel. Joanne says, hold on. Take the graphic down. Joanne says, we've almost survived Biden. Hang in there, everyone. Man, did anybody hear his commencement speech the other day? What a positive, roaring. I just said roaring because I saw Roaring Kitty. What a positive message you put out there to the masses. Whoever wrote that speech should be fired immediately because obviously Joe Biden didn't write it. I mean, why would you go out there and tell someone who's graduating from one of the most prestigious all-black colleges in the nation, in the world, and tell them they have to work 10 times as hard because the country doesn't love them? You're basically telling them that everything they just did in this great achievement of graduating from this college and the last, 20 years of sweat and tears and blood that they put into getting their degree is worthless because they have to go out there and work 10 times harder than someone else, than the rest of the country. Why would you go out and say something like that as the supposed leader of the free world? It's unbelievable. Like, do they think that this is, and again, all the buzzwords came up in the speech. George Floyd, white supremacy, systemic racism, the Klan, January 6th, insurrection. These kids do you really think any of those things are affecting these guys or these students who are graduating this year? None of that's going to have any effect in their life going forward. Zero impact. And that's all the points you decide to, instead of, and why did they pick Joe Biden in the first place? There's not some black leader out there or some businessman or something who's done some type of, there's tons of them out there that you could have brought onto that stage and given a positive reinforcing speech, congratulations, and go out and kill it. Instead, they bring this bumbling fool out who can't even, coherently spit out the sentences from the teleprompter to just put a damper on the whole day. It's amazing. I still can't believe this guy got 81 million votes. It is the most popular president in U.S. history. All right, let me get back to the chat. Jay's 22B says, hello from Australia by a 5th-generation convict. Jay's, good to see you in the chat, my man. Jay says, did I go? No, Jay. I didn't. I didn't make it out there, unfortunately. Kennedy says, Michael Saylor is another AA, not quite as close, but a junior of AA. Joe says, man, don't make the mistake of looking at the Hunter Biden laptop photos you can never unsee. Yeah, they're pretty frightening. I just can't even imagine if Eric or Donald Trump Jr. had pictures like that. I mean, there's not been a peep on mainstream media about it. Can you imagine if one of the two Trump sons or, the younger one had anything close to the type of pictures that we have seen from Hunter Biden? The outrage would be never ending. Harry Parrott says, per U.S. Declaration of Independence, that whenever the form of government becomes destructive of these ends, survive the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government. I think we just need the people out, Harry Parrott. I've said this a lot of times, and I'll stick by it tonight. I don't think the documents are the problem. I think we fixed most of the social injustices and the problems that we had as far as, the rights of everyone to vote, no matter what your sex is or color or any of that. I don't think the paperwork is the problem. I think the people who are carrying out the directions in the paperwork are the problem. They have to go. They have lost their way, and they are no longer representing their constituents or the American people in general. If you had people in there who were under the threat of term limits and not being able to be lobbied from, some of these big corporate donors, and, we were dealing with single issue bills that were coming to the House floor, there's a couple small changes you could make to some of the way that Congress is run that would have a huge impact on the way that people vote and actually representing their constituency back home. Another thing, insider trading, like that's got to come to an end. You can't have the ability to make, congressional decisions and apply policy if you have a financial interest or some type of financial gain that you can get where you would go against what a majority of the population wants. We're not in a constitutional republic if that's the case. But I definitely believe that there's a reckoning coming. I don't think that the millennials and Gen X, especially with what we're seeing right now through the internet, I think has just opened things up wide, right? And that's why people are waking up to how corrupt and how rotted our government has become. You're seeing it, whether it's their decisions on hiding information about the UAP, UFO phenomenon, what's going on with that, or, shutting down and influencing social media and determining who can speak and who can't and what's disinformation and what's not. Remember, this administration tried to put some nutbag loon as the head of disinformation for the country until it, caught like unbelievable backlash. And they had to step down from that and change it. But screaming all day about how we're going to lose democracy if somehow Donald Trump gets elected is just horseshit. We're not living in a democracy right now. Gorilla Grodd says, bro, China still leads in 80% of manufacturing, mining, and processing raw goods. We can say we're divesting, but we aren't building anything. And now it brings to dumping our dollar. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right, Gorilla Grodd? Like, we've become basically a money printing country instead of a manufacturing company. We've shipped all those jobs and those factories overseas. And that is going to become a problem in the future. If people aren't buying up the debt, and that has to come back to on us, it's going to be catastrophic. We aren't making and manufacturing things anymore. Like because of what happened with, well, I say NATO, not NATO. Yeah, no, not NATO. I can't think of the word now. The acronym. Cancel Bubble says China has only 5 ounces of gold. I don't think that was the number. Professional says, when is Treys going to start tweeting some video clips? I don't think we'll hear from him for a while. I think everything that happened really messed with him emotionally. You could tell that he was cracking, I think. You could tell he was cracking, and not the booze. Emotionally, he was cracking. Yeah, I think Gorilla Grodd makes a great point. And China continues to, with the Belt and Road Initiative, they are just expanding their influence. They're opening ports, they're building roads, they're building schools, they're building airports. And so they're going to have, their globalization is going to touch the Southern Hemisphere way more than anything that NATO or the United States or the West can compete with right now. All we have are falling apart military bases and a diminishing military recruitment that we can't keep up with the numbers. So who are you going to put in those bases? If no one wants to go fight for the country, then how are you going to fill out 800 military bases around the world? The only issue I think that these BRICS nations face with this currency is trust. Now, that is one thing for the last, since the end of World War II, that, most of the world has had in the United States is the trust that they will be able to recoup these assets, right? They will be able to, they won't have to worry about the U.S. defaulting or not being able to come up with their money. But that is changing. I mean, we are $35 trillion in debt right now with no end in sight. I mean, nobody is talking about getting the deficit and cutting spending. Very few people in Congress right now are talking about this. Our interest payments on the debt alone are going to surpass the spending, I believe, and healthcare in the country by next year. Just the interest payments alone. Harry Parrott says the first steps of monetary revolution in the U.S. has started. Massey has introduced the End the Fed bill. I did see that. Whoop, that's not it. Do I have that up here? End the Fed? No, I must have taken it down. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, I did. I took it down. Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. And, I give a lot of credit to Thomas Massey. I don't agree with 100% of what he says. But out of everyone in Congress, I probably trust him. Maybe the whole government itself, I probably trust him the most. Out of any one of the 535 candidates out there, Thomas Massey has, I think, the interest of the American people in general 99% of the time when he goes to the floor to vote or any of the bills that he is bringing. All right, let's pull this up. This is from FX Street. Actually, both of the gentlemen from Kentucky, I think are overall some of the best congressmen that we have. All right, here's a press release. This is from 4 days ago. It says Representative Thomas Massie, Washington, D.C., announces the introduction of H.R. 8421, the Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act. Representative Massie's legislation abolishes the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve Banks. It also repeals the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, the law that created the Federal Reserve System. It says Americans are suffering under crippling inflation and the Federal Reserve is to blame, said Representative Massie, because remember, the Federal Reserve was set up for two purposes. That was to keep down unemployment and keep down inflation. Massie said during COVID, the Federal Reserve created trillions of dollars out of thin air and loaned it to the Treasury Department to enable unprecedented deficit spending. By monetizing the debt, the Federal Reserve devalued the dollar and enabled free money policies that caused the high inflation we see today. And that is 100% fact. Monetizing debt is a closely coordinated effort between the White House, Federal Reserve, Treasury Department, Congress, big banks, and Wall Street, Representative Massie continued. Through this process, retirees see their savings evaporate due to the actions of a central bank pursuing inflationary policies that benefit the wealthy and connected. If we really want to reduce inflation, the most effective policy is to end the Federal Reserve. And I 100% agree with that. The only thing that inflation does is crush the middle class. And that's really the aim of this administration and, you know, government as a whole in this country. They need to crush the middle class. If some people make it to the very top during that, during their attempts at that, that's fine. Most people will find themselves at the bottom because the middle class is really the only thing that stands in the way of ultimate government supremacy and, you know, just basically the complete destruction of any civil liberties that we might have. The Federal Reserve Board of Abolition Act was introduced first by Representative Ron Paul from Texas in 1999 and hasn't been reintroduced since 2013. In addition to introducing the legislation to end the Fed, Representative Massie has also introduced H.R. 24, the Federal Reserve Transparency Act of 2023, to audit the Federal Reserve. H.R. 24 was originally introduced by former Representative, again, Ron Paul of Texas, who is Rand Paul's dad. And this is another issue that we have. The Federal Reserve and transparency, they have not had an audit since their inception. Never have they been audited. So we have no idea what is going on behind closed doors over at the Fed. It talks about some of the co-sponsors here, and it's all the usual people that you would see with the America First, you know, former Tea Party / whatever you want to call them, reps. You'll see all the same names. Victoria Sparks from Indiana, Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, Gosar from Arizona, Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, Harriet Hagman, who took over for Cheney in Wyoming, Michael Cloud from Texas, Tim Burchett from Tennessee, Lauren Boebert, Aaron Biggs, Andy Biggs. I don't see Matt Gaetz. I didn't see Rand Paul on here. Chip Roy, which is weird, unless I'm missing it. I don't see him. Basically, the 25 or 30 members of the America First caucus in Congress. That's it. I saw Mitt Romney on, I want to say Meet the Press. I don't know if it was last weekend or the weekend before. And he was talking about the need to fund Ukraine and the need for America to fight for democracy around the world. And it's just, they really think that, especially the neocons, whether just doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on, whether Republicans or Democrats, think that the American people are stupid and that we actually believe that they are trying to fight for democracy around the world, that this has nothing to do with the military-industrial complex and, big oil and gas. The fact that they keep gaslighting and saying that, Ukraine is somehow fighting for democracy when they've shut down all opposition in their media, when they've shut down some religious organizations, they are not holding elections anymore. I mean, it's the biggest fucking joke that they keep with this tagline. Like, we're just going to keep sitting there and, it's not the end of the funding. The 60 million isn't enough. They don't even think that that's going to be able to last Ukraine the rest of the year. So when does it end? As long as these guys are still there, as long as these neocons are still in Congress, they're going to keep pulling this shit, just taking our tax dollars, making the money printer go burr, and shipping it overseas. And, they reap the benefits on the other side when it comes to the lobbyists and keeping them in power in Congress, with the campaign donations and the speaking fees when they're done, going to these big, whether it's Wall Street or the oil companies. It's all just one big vicious cycle that's been happening for a long time. Again, like I said earlier, but it's definitely getting exposed now on a massive scale. And it's hitting, every different culture, every different race in this country. One of the biggest reasons that they are doing this huge influx of illegal immigrants from all over the world is to keep us at war with each other, to keep us fighting so that we can't unite, so that we can't get together on a social class consensus to push back. You import 12, 15 million people over the last 3 years into this country who have absolutely no ties here. They have no history with this country. They have no family members who were brought here. They have no love, respect for any of it. They're from all different nations all over the world. A lot of them didn't want to come here the right way. They decided to come in illegally and exploit the system. And, all I keep hearing is diversity is our strength. And you're a misogynist, racist bigot if you don't want immigrants coming in. And I have no issue with immigrants. I just want it done the right way, just like most of our parents or grandparents did coming into this country. I don't want a mass invasion of people with all different ideas. And like I said, no love for this country other than they're coming here to reap the rewards of the U.S. taxpayers, hard-earned work, when that money could be going to Americans. And that was one of the things Mitt Romney was talking about. He kept saying, the America First Party says, we need to give at home first, take care of our own first. But, if we don't fund Ukraine, it'll be our sons and daughters over there fighting. Well, says who? The American people aren't going to vote for that. They're not going to go for that. They don't even want the money getting sent there. You think they're going to send their sons and daughters over there to fight? It's just a sham. I wish there were more of these congressmen in office right now that could help push this, because abolishing the Fed would be a great idea. They have been nothing but trouble. And, who knows what they're going to do? I don't know if they're necessarily politicized right now, one way or the other. Is Jerome Powell going to, cut back on rates before the election to make the numbers look better? Biden has made some good points as far as inflation goes, and what he had to deal with coming in back in 2021 when he took over in office. If you remember, well, let me let him tell you.
Close to 3%. We're in a situation where we're better situated than we were when we took office, where inflation was skyrocketing. Bringing down inflation. It was 9% when I came to office. I think inflation has gone slightly up. It was at 9% when I came in.
You're its top you're the head of the Council of Economic Advisors. Do you ever whisper in his ear, Mr. President, just to be technical about it, it wasn't 9% when you assumed office, it was 1.4%. It got as high as 9% in 2022. You brought it down from that, but it was never, ever, ever 9% when you came into office. So why does he keep saying it?
Well, first of all, let me point out that in that very quote you played, the president talked about how concerned he was for households struggling with prices that he consistently
That's not what I asked you. That's not what I asked you.
So
why does he keep misrepresenting this?
He's making the point that the factors that caused inflation to climb to 9% were in place when he took office.
No,
I think
that's
it was
not what he said. He said it was at 9%. It would eventually get to 9% a little over a year after that. But the fact of the matter is it wasn't 9%. So if I can't trust him quoting data in real time, why should I believe what he's talking about now?
So the annual growth in core inflation in the second quarter of 21 was in fact about 9%. And his point about inflation down 60% off its peak is very much the case. So
no,
look,
it wasn't. It was not. It was not at that. So you're almost as bad as he is. Why can't you just say it was high? It got as high as 9%. You'd be accurate in saying that. And we have now brought it down, and we're struggling in around the 3% area. But it's better than it was. But instead, to hang it on his predecessor, that you inherited something that was through the roof when we were in the middle of COVID. It just seems to the American people, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you're lying. Neil. You're just lying.
Well, hold on. I hear you. I hear you. The president was making the point that I think is unequivocally true. The factors that took inflation to 9% were in place when he took office.
That is not what he said, Jared. And you're
That's the economic advisor of the president, Jared Bernstein. We talked about him the other night, right? Just a bunch of liars. 1.4% was the actual number when Biden came in. Prometheus says that could be the plan. Bankrupt the United States, let the conservative Republicans. I've thought about this, Prometheus, a bunch of times in the last couple of weeks. I thought about this because I'm like, you know, they don't seem to be changing their position on Biden, knowing that he's getting smoked right now in the polls in almost every swing state. The Black Latino vote has swung like 20, 30 points, some in some states as high as 50 in Trump's favor. So the writing is on the wall. I don't know if this time around they can get away with what happened back in 2020 because there is no COVID, unless we see something, you know, crazy spark off, like, you know, something between Iran and Israel escalating, and, you know, we have to get more involved with that. Or, you know, God forbid, there's a tactical nuke used over in Eastern Europe, or a NATO country is attacked and Article 5 is invoked. It's going to be tough, right? He says, so that they can blame the Republicans for the next depression and everything else. That has crossed my mind more than a few times in the past couple of weeks, I have to admit. I thought about it and said, so what is going to be the playbook if Trump just, you know, trounces Biden in the general election? Say he wins the Electoral College and the, you know, popular vote. How are they going to set themselves up for 2028? Because ultimately, you know, this is a back and forth tug of war, right, between the right and the left. So how do they set themselves up to revenge themselves? And, you know, the guy that debated Pelosi, and we didn't get to it tonight because of just not having time. We got into a couple other things, but the guy from Mumford & Sons that debated Pelosi over in Oxford last week, he mentioned some of this, right? Talking about, you know, you're up here saying we can't let Trump win. We can't let Trump win because democracy is at stake. For 3.5 years, you have had the reins and done absolutely nothing for anyone, Trump shouldn't even be a factor right now. You guys have had, all this time to make your case to the American people of why Biden is one of the greatest presidents of all time and all the great things that he's done for this country. He shouldn't even be an issue right now. He should be a non-factor. You guys have 81 indictments against the man, dragging him through court every day. He can't go out and campaign, yet his poll numbers continue to rise. The fact that he's even got his foot in the door and up in the polls in 7 out of the 9 swing states is an atrocity. It shows you how bad their policies really are, how terrible Bidenomics really is. Of course, they can't make that argument, right? But yeah, Prometheus, that thought has crossed my mind many times. I don't know how much Trump can change. And I said this earlier, probably before you came on. I don't know how much effect he can have on bringing, and I wouldn't say bringing China and Russia back into the fold, but as far as them devaluing the dollar and basically abandoning it as to use for trading commodities, I don't know how he's going to make peace with these people. So I've thought about that. Would they just, intentionally speed up, use Jerome Powell in the Federal Reserve to cut rates, slash rates, which would be terrible for inflation numbers. I mean, they just can't do it right now. Obviously, if Powell and the Fed could bring down interest rates, I think they would have already done it by now, right? So clearly, they don't see anywhere us heading in the 2% direction. They've already abandoned transitory as a word out of the vocabulary. I think it's erased from the dictionary last week. I went looking for it, couldn't find it. But that is definitely something that I think we all should think about. Because if this is a runaway train, this election in 2024, in November, if this is a runaway train and they just can't stop Trump because of everything that they're doing to him, as far as, demonizing through the media and with these charges and weaponizing the DOJ, how do they set themselves up for success down the line? Because this could be the last election that the Democrats ever get a sniff at as far as presidentially. Now, they could take back the House and they still have the Senate. But it looks like disaster is looming on the horizon. One way is by doing what Prometheus is saying right there. JT says our regulatory and enforcement agencies on all levels, top to bottom, are corrupt. Yeah, they all need to be. Yeah, JT, they all need to be dismembered, drawn and quartered. Harry Parrott says the white guy has his passport. If he is CIA, pretty poor old days. You didn't carry anything. You were a dead man walking. I think that was your text, your comment I saw earlier. I mentioned it, Harry. Titan476K says, sup with a big mass. AMC, GME, Silva, XRP. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you too, man. Good to be back. Mark says, I'm sorry, but I don't believe this. It's vague. Sounds scripted. Who knows nowadays? Seems like half the shit that we're seeing on TV is scripted. Ivan says, massive. The CAT system goes live on the 28th. Do you expect AMC to run? Man, Ivan. I just don't know if it's going to have the effect that everyone is speculating on. These guys have had a lot of time to prepare for this. It's supposedly going to show us and be able to, show naked shorting or expose naked shorting, or at least, clamp down on it. That it will provide more transparency in the marketplace. If it does that, great, and I hope it does. But as far as speculation on price runs go, I mean, you guys have been following me for a long time now. I stopped doing that just because I can't tell you either way. My first big mistake was back on June 3rd or 4th of 2021, saying that those shares had not been approved yet. And ever since then, I've tried to bite my tongue on speculation and, you know, cutting out certain words, more of my vocabulary, like MOAS, right? It's just better safe than sorry. All right, we just ran past the 2-hour mark, guys. It is closing in on 1 o'clock a.m. here. I'm going to try to get some normal sleep tonight because, like I said, I got to work the next 6 nights in a row. Bunch of guys at work are out on vacation leading up to Memorial Day. So they put me down for an extra shift, which is going to be hell. But, yeah, I'm going to try to get my body readjusted best I can. God, I'm so far behind on the chat. Grandpa Barney, I see you in the house. Good to see you, Grandpa Barney. Joe Wen says Jared Bernstein. Chris Callis, how you doing tonight? Says long time, Mass. Great to see you again. Stay strong. I'm rocking with you, man. I'm staying strong the best I can. There's a revolution coming. Joe Wen says facts. Trump's return is their own fault. 100%. 100%. Prometheus says Bidenomics is freaking great. We have even seen or reached the bottom yet. Side note, they will blame everything on AI. Oh, Moses says, Mass, thanks for your work as always. Guys, yeah, I'm going to try to do my best to get out here more often. Like I said, this new schedule is just, it's taxing right now. But hopefully very soon I will have an answer from that job. I'll tell you, I did get an email from them back on the 18th that I saw just today saying that the interview went very well and that they have a lot of candidates they have to look after. And they appreciate all the time I put into and all the steps I've taken to get to this point. And they'll be reviewing everyone on a case-by-case basis. And they'll be back to me as soon as possible. So as soon as I have that news, the documentary will drop. Like I said, it's ready to go. And yeah, keep your fingers crossed for me, guys. Hopefully that invitation is extended to me and I can get off this goddamn overnight bullshit and killing myself slowly. All right. I will let you guys go. I'm going to get some sleep and some rest. Thank you to everyone who came by tonight. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for supporting me and each other. Thanks for keeping it good in the comments, man. Everyone was respectful tonight. And normally that's the way it goes with this channel. I love all of my people. And I appreciate you guys. Have a great night. And I will be back here as soon as possible to reconvene with you and help share any info I can. And open up so you guys can let your voices be heard as well as mine. That's what the channel's for. That's what the platform's for. And no one can stop us. All right, guys. Love y'all. God bless. Have a good night. I'm the Massalorian, and I'm out.